It's another adventure with HiddenIncaTours.com, and today, Easter Island. This is my first book that I wrote about Easter Island, available at Amazon. And so this is part 2 of exploring Easter Island, or Rapa Nui. Little tiny place, only 5 miles by 7 miles by 10 miles, and more than 2,000 miles away from Chile, or the west coast of South America. So the infrastructure is relatively modern, taking into account how far away it is from anything. And we're on one of the paved roads, one of the few paved roads on the island, heading towards the Rano Raraku Quarry. So here we are at the quarry itself, and this is where more than 900 of the moai figures were excavated, or that's where the quarry is. So we're walking around here, and pretty soon you're going to be able to see many of these. There are more than 300, I believe, still in the quarry area. And as you can see, they're basically buried up to their shoulders or even up to their necks, but each one is a full body. And there's one in the quarry that you will see, unfinished, that would have weighed 180 tons if it had been finished, which it wasn't. And also there are two different varieties of moai. There are ones with flat noses and others like this one with more of a, some would say, European style nose. So it is quite possible that there were two different time periods of their construction. So again, this is the classic view of what most people associate with Easter Island. Again, buried up to their necks unless the heads are broken off, and 950 of them on the island. One of these ones on the right-hand side was excavated by Thor Heyerdahl, and it proved that the moai heads are in fact full bodies. And the one that he excavated, I believe, was more than 20 feet tall. So moving farther along, these are the classic ones with the so-called aquiline nose. And then here we see a much smaller one that is lying down on its front. So I believe that there were two different time periods of construction, that the ones with the aquiline noses, which are the tallest ones, were made first by a pre-Polynesian culture, and then the Polynesians arrived about 1,000 years ago, likely from Tahiti, and they started to copy on a much smaller scale. So the mystery is, who were the original builders? Again, you see a small one lying down, and then some much larger ones that are buried up to their necks. And that is the quarry in the background. And here again, some detailed views of some of the larger ones. And this one has a ship carved onto its torso. Now, it is quite possible that originally it was carved as a canoe, and then later on the sails were added once European contact was made, sometime in the 1720s. And now we're going to approach one that is still in the quarry, quite massive one. The material is actually volcanic tuff, which is a concentrated volcanic ash that has been compressed over the course of likely hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. And this gives you the view of the entire figure that was never finished. Moving farther and farther along, this is on the outskirts of the actual crater itself. The whole thing is the quarry. And now we're approaching a little moai that I believe is the only one ever found in a kneeling position. And in the far distance you'll see Tongoriki, which is a site we're going to get to very soon. So this gives you the landscape from the quarry edge itself, and you see the multiple moai that were never moved to any other place on the island. Almost all of the moai that were moved and placed in position face inland. They do not face the ocean, but there are 7 that will be in another video which in fact face the ocean, and they are called the 7 navigators. So this is a view of the quarry, and there in the center is the one that would have weighed about 180 tons but was never completed. And now we're farther along on the outer edge of the quarry, and we're actually going to climb inside of it. So this is my 3rd time to Easter Island, Rapa Nui, and the first time that I was ever able to actually get into the crater itself. Here again you see volcanic stone material, and then volcanic ash or mud, and then there is a small lake in the middle of the quarry area. It's an ancient volcanic crater, of course. And moving along, you'll see that there are totora reeds growing in this little lake. There are actually also totora reeds growing in a much larger lake on the island. And totora reeds are native to this island, as well as the coast of Peru and Lake Titicaca in Peru and Bolivia. And if you look very carefully in the background, you'll see more of the moai, once again buried up to the shoulders or up to the necks. And you're not allowed to get too close to them because there are still excavations going on. But this is the fence from which you can see that there are quite a few of them there still inside the crater. And now this is Tongoriki, which is the largest ceremonial platform or ahu on the island. And there are 15 of the moai that have been put back up because the whole ahu altar was hit by a tsunami in the 1960s, I believe. And then these are the so-called hats that belonged on top of the moai. In fact, it's indicative of red hair with a top knot, which is the traditional way that many Polynesians wear their hair. So that's a mystery. Could it possibly mean that the first people who lived on Easter Island or Rapa Nui were actually red-headed people? And so here you see the different shapes and sizes, and there is one of them with its top knot or pukao put back into position. And again, another view of the moai that have been put back up again. And now we're going to go around the backside, and look how massive this ahu is. The blank space on the right part of the screen now could mean, according to our guide Alejandro, that there were spaces for possibly 7 more moai to be placed in position at a future time. Now the hill in the background it's called the Poike Ditch, and that is where a fierce battle happened between what were called the long ears and the short ear people. The long ears were the nobility and the short ears were the common folk. And the short ears decided to kill off the nobility, most likely due to a problem with drought at one time prior to the arrival of the first Europeans, theoretically, in the 1720s. And now you see shattered parts of smaller moai, and you see that one on the right side has quite a polished surface. So it is possible that some were made of a harder material than the volcanic tuff, and in fact there is one in the British Museum which is made of very hard basalt, and it's unknown how that material was shaped, if the only tools that the Rapa Nui people had was in fact basalt. How do you shape basalt with basalt? And finally, we're driving by the ocean here, and this is a little recreation of a Polynesian village. This stone structure is actually a chicken house, so the chickens would come in and out of that hole you see on the left. And chickens were very important to the diet of the Rapa Nui people, and were likely brought from Tahiti when they discovered and decided to inhabit the island with their chief called Hotumatua. So here again, a relatively simple construction of volcanic stone, and there's the hole for the chickens to go in, with banana trees as well growing on the inside. This is an ancient earth oven being shown to us by Alejandro, similar to a luau in Hawaii. And then this is a house. Originally, it's believed that the first settlers used their canoe hulls to make a house. But of course, over the course of time, they would have rotted away, and there was limited wood on the island, basically only the milo tree, I believe, or miro tree. And so instead, they're made with smaller tree trunks and, of course, thatch roofing. And then this is a recreation of a garden. I'm not sure if these are gourds or if they're watermelon. They look more like watermelon to me. I don't believe that watermelon is indigenous to Polynesia, but it's just a way to recreate what a gourd garden would look like. And now we get to see the interesting finely shaped stones of the base of the canoe house. And so once again, this is part 2 of a 5 or 6 part series that I'm doing about my recent trip to Easter Island in October of 2018. And I look forward to sharing more of the interesting aspects and mysteries of Rapa Nui. So these are related books and videos at Amazon.com. My first book, which is Easter Island, Guide for Inquisitive Minds, in ebook and paperback form. This is the one I'm presently working on about lost ancient high technology on Easter Island. And this is a video I did about an hour long on Amazon Prime. And also these are upcoming Hidden Inca tours.